I'm going to give it a few seconds and let some people trickle in real quick. I see we already have a few in here. What's going on, everybody? Hopefully you guys are having a good hump day, Wednesday. Only a couple more days to the weekend, right? That's one thing about YouTube that's definitely different from other jobs. I do this. This is an everyday thing for me. I don't, upload, twice a week or 3 times a week. I upload multiple times a week. So my days actually, start running in together. I'm like, wait, what day is this Wednesday? Is this Saturday? So it's a little bit different whenever you, whenever your job is basically every day. So, but for the normal working people, only a few more days to the weekend, and then, have some fun. It's supposed to be warm around here. I live in the upstate of South Carolina, and it's supposed to warm up in the upper 80s, but then it's supposed to get cold again. So I just wish I wish the weather would make up its mind. It's getting on my nerves. No snow this year, which, believe it or not, that's a little weird for South Carolina. No snow, so that was a little weird, but whatever. All right. Anyways, so everybody, please hit the like button before we do anything else. Please hit the like button. Trust me, those likes really help the YouTube videos, channels, all that stuff. You're basically telling YouTube, hey, kind of like this video, suggest it, and it does, and people see it, click on it. So you're not just helping me, you're also helping yourself because you're helping grow the audience, and we greatly appreciate it. And the comments, that's a big deal too. So keep the comments coming. And as usual, if you have a question, comment, concern, rebuttal, a correction, maybe I said something incorrectly. People like to correct me all the time. Or you just want to troll me. Super chat. Hit that super chat button, the little dollar sign that you see on the bottom right-hand corner. Anything you put in that super chat is going to go on the screen right where you see golden bluted. I'm going to read it for everybody to hear, and it's a great way to support the channel. I've said it many times, but I got to say it again. We always appreciate the super chats, but in the off season, we appreciate them just a little bit more because the views, you take a hit on the views. Now, I've been blessed over the past couple months because February and March have been tremendous months, and it's due in part because of the Pac-12 situation. So I've had some pretty good months, but we still appreciate all those donations. It's a great way to support the channel, help keep things moving because this is my full-time job. I do it 24/7. And the bills don't pay themselves. That's all I can say. Anyways, yeah, we got to talk about the Pac-12 again. But something else has developed, and of course, it's not good. Every day, I've said this on multiple videos. Every day that you see nothing from the Pac-12 is another bad day for the Pac-12. If something good was happening, or the deal is done, or teams are signing the grant of rights, the Pac-12 will let us know, because there is nothing but negativity around the Pac-12 right now when it comes to people talking about it. So every day that goes by that there's no news out of the Pac-12, that's actually bad news. And I'm going to repeat myself again. The old adage, no news is good news. No. Not this go around. No news from the Pac-12. Bad news. It is bad news. So the biggest thing that I'm hearing now, and I've talked about it for a couple of days, but it's starting to get a little more, I don't know, intense, real, whatever word you want to insert into that sentence. ESPN might be the downfall of the Pac-12. I'm just going to put it to you that way. Seriously, ESPN, if this goes down like everybody thinks it's going to, it might be at least partly ESPN's fault. Now, that's not me, getting George Kliavkoff off the hook. Of course, he's made bad decisions. He drug his feet. The Big 12 jumped in front. They grabbed a large chunk of the money that was available. And for whatever reason, he thought his conference was, I guess, as valuable as the Big Ten, SEC. So he's liable. He's responsible for some of this. He is. We know that. Man, ESPN, and the more you think about it, it all makes sense. It's starting to make sense. Because whenever all this Pac-12 stuff started, what I didn't know was just how bad the financial situation for ESPN is. That's what's driving this narrative of the Pac-12 possibly going under. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't want the Pac-12 to go away. I don't. I like the Pac-12. I've said it many times. I remember when Washington won their national championship in the early 90s. I remember when USC was dominant, and it was an actual upset whenever Texas beat them in the national championship. I remember Oregon being strong there for a while. And even, it's nice to see UCLA coming back under Chip Kelly. And I predicted that. I still think he's a good coach, and he's proving it again. UCLA is way better under Chip Kelly. I mean, if you compare UCLA pre-Chip Kelly to post-Chip Kelly, completely different. So I miss the Pac-12 being relevant. So don't get these videos twisted that I'm making. It's just, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and what makes sense. I still let you, the viewers, form your own opinion, make up your own mind. I'm just telling what I'm seeing, what I'm saying, my opinion, and why I think the way I think. So the biggest reason that the Pac-12 is in the situation that they're in right now is because of ESPN. ESPN and Disney not looking good. One of my subscribers said a big part of this was Lucasfilms kind of ticking off Star Wars fans. There's some things about these Star Wars TV shows, movies, whatever, that really just ticked off a bunch of Star Wars fans, and they're not getting the revenue or the views, whatever you want to call it, that they thought that they would get. Marvel isn't doing so well either. I don't know what happened there, but they're saying Marvel isn't doing very good. And ESPN just had to fire their vice president of operations because of allegations of harassment. And then on top of that, I'm hearing that ESPN is about to fire a bunch of people, and that nobody is safe. Not even the almighty Stephen A. Smith, the biggest mouth of ESPN. All right, not even he is safe. So these cuts is a symptom of the problem. The problem is they're not doing great. They're not, maybe they overspent on some budgets and they're not bringing in what they thought they were going to bring in. I don't know. I don't know the actual reason. All I know is that they're hurting for money. Now, some people in the comment section of the video that I made today, they're like, well, if ESPN can figure out a way out of the SEC deal, that would save them a lot of money right there. Well, ESPN is going to actually make a lot of money off the SEC, and they're going to make some money off the ACC as well. And they'll also make some money off the Big 12. After 2024, they're not going to have any connections to the Big 10. So that's going to be off the table. But those are contracts. They're not going to be able to get out of that, all right? So that's a done deal. Yes, it's a lot of money, but it's a done deal. And I think whenever it comes to the conference contracts, ESPN will be fine. That's not the problem. It's some of these other decisions that is hurting ESPN right now. So let's think about this, okay? ESPN, bad financial situation right now. Even Stephen A. Smith could be fired. I mean, a lot of people said that. It's possible. It doesn't mean he will, okay? I'm not saying he will. I'm just saying he could be. Anybody can right now. That's the situation we're looking at. All right, so ESPN in a bad financial situation. We heard earlier this year that they did have an offer, but they pulled the offer because of the situation at Disney. They had to fire some employees, not because they weren't doing their job, just they had to fire them because they couldn't afford to pay the positions. So ESPN pulled that offer and then re-offered much, much lower. Now, I'm hearing conflicting reports on that, okay? Y'all tell me which one makes the most sense. Okay? Just the two deals that I'm about to explain. Y'all tell me which one makes the most sense, taking into consideration everything we know, all right? The first deal that I heard was a deal that was worth total $280 million for the 10 teams. That's $28 million per team per year, and that would include Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and of course ESPN. And rumor is the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever, actually turned that down. Okay? Now, the other amount that I'm hearing was actually 380. Okay? But on top of that, that was for the 10 teams. So the 10 teams would be making $38 million a year. So right off the bat, I'm like, oh, that sounds a little fishy, but okay. So $38 million a piece for 10 teams. And I'm thinking, well, maybe because of the math, they have less members than the Big 10, that or the Big 12, excuse me. Maybe that's why they would be making more. I don't know. So, but beyond that, then I was told that the 10 teams agreed to give $5 million apiece to San Diego State and SMU for them to come join the Pac-12. Meaning both SMU and San Diego State would be making $25 million because the 10 schools, out of the goodness of their heart, said, I'll donate $5 million. I'll donate $5 million, $5 million, $5 million. And it added up to $25 million and $25 million. So they go from $38 million to $33 million. So now it's much closer to the Big 12, right? And I'm thinking, number one, ESPN wouldn't offer that big of an amount. Okay, that's the first thing that kind of went off in my head. That the amount itself doesn't make sense. Number two, if that was the offered amount, why in the world would the current 10 members give up $5 million apiece to bring in teams that add absolutely no value? So let me get this straight. Each team on a so-so TV deal already is willing to give up $5 million to bring in teams that do nothing. San Diego State is fine. I have no problem with San Diego State joining the Pac-12. I think that's a smart move. I think it makes sense. But my point is, giving up $5 million apiece. Oh, my head is hurting because of this. To bring in two teams on a deal that's not great already. I mean, if they were making bank like the SEC and the Big Ten, I could understand that. I could understand that. I could understand that. But a deal that's under $40 million, and then they're like, okay, we'll give $5 million a piece, and then we can bring in SMU and San Diego State, right? And I don't know. In my opinion, like I said, I'll let y'all make up your own mind, and I'm not going to give out who said what, because I don't want to try to make anybody look bad or turn anybody against anybody, all right? I'm not trying to do that. But to me, the first offer made sense because, number one, we know ESPN is in financial trouble right now. So the lower offer, of course, that makes more sense. Number two, the thing where the team's giving up $5 million apiece to bring in two teams that really doesn't make all that much sense, except for San Diego State. I like them. So that kind of, I don't know, didn't make a lot of sense. Number three, what about the grant of rights? It's one thing to have a TV deal in front of you. It's another thing to have teams actually sign the grant of rights. If there is a deal that's decent like that for the Pac-12, these teams would be signing right now. Like, it'd be a done deal, and we'd be hearing about it. I would assume. Maybe I'm off about that. I don't know. But if the deal was the second deal that I mentioned, then I think at least the large majority of the Pac-12 teams would be signing on the dotted line, and, people would be talking about. Maybe the only two holdouts would be Washington and Oregon, depending on the duration of the grant of rights, because I've heard that Oregon and Washington do not want to have to pay their way out of the Pac-12, so they are not willing to sign a grant of rights past 3 years. That's the most consistent news that I've heard about actual grant of rights. So if deal, we'll call it deal B. If deal B, not deal A, but deal B was the actual deal, then I would think, you'd have 8 members signing for sure. Maybe Washington and Oregon don't sign. And then SMU and San Diego State, they're in as well. So there's 10 members right there. And I think the other members would, even though Oregon and Washington, they're valuable brands, right? And it would suck for them to leave. But, that would be more money for everybody else. It's like, okay, well, that makes up for the $5 million that each of us had to pay out. Now we're getting $38 million apiece again. Don't know what we're going to do on the next renegotiation without Oregon and Washington, but that's more money for us. Simple math. If you have less members, you're going to have more money because there's less pieces of the pie to split it between. Okay? So I don't think they would have a huge problem. Maybe in the future they would have a huge problem with the renegotiation. But, they got some good brands in there still, right? Without Oregon and Washington. Those are the best brands. No, not going to lie about that. Best brands. Some would consider the 2 brands the glue that's keeping everything together right now. And that if they bolt, that's when things really start to crumble. Now, I've done a lot. I'm just going to say I've done a lot of videos on Washington and Oregon going to the Big Ten. There might be a better shot, and I say might, okay? There might be a better shot because it makes sense for both sides for this other option. And I mentioned it in one of my videos that I did today. I actually think there's a better chance that the Big Ten goes out and gets Stanford and Cal out of the Pac-12, all right? So think of it this way. The Big Ten does want teams out of the ACC. That's a given. Everybody knows that, okay? Definitely, 100%, they want those teams. They don't know when those teams will be available. They don't know if it'll last till 2036. We got to wait till 2036. Don't know. But they do want teams out of the ACC, right? So I don't think they're going to want too many teams out of the Pac-12. And the reason that I flipped from Oregon and Washington to Stanford and Cal, because if you really think about it, it actually makes more sense. Because Stanford and Cal, even though they don't have the football brands, they have the everything else brands. Okay? When it comes to research, academics, grants, endowments, they are the cream of the crop in all that stuff. Okay? Everything. And they do bring value to the Big Ten, most certainly. On top of that, they would be great travel partners for USC and UCLA. Great. Perfect. Better than Washington and Oregon. And we've also heard that USC does not want Oregon in the Big Ten. There's actually a lot more reasons why the Big Ten would get Stanford and Cal over Oregon and Washington. I'm just saying. And if that happens, that changes everything. Okay? So if the Big Ten, think about this, guys. If the Big Ten gets Stanford and Cal, what's the main reason that these teams are saying, I'm talking Utah, Arizona State. Nah, we're staying in the Pac-12. We don't want to go to the Big 12. We've heard the excuses of, if we jump to the Big 12, that's going to hurt our academics and our research funding. Why? Because they're connected to Stanford and Cal in the Pac-12, right? So if the Big Ten comes in and swoops Stanford and Cal, well then, staying in the Pac-12, you're still not going to have that connection. So you don't have that connection. You're going to make less money. Then it turns into a no-brainer. Almost have to jump to the Big 12. I think that is the decision that could send the Pac-12 into a spiral, because Stanford and Cal are the reasons why anybody wouldn't jump. Insert name. Anybody. Utah, Arizona State, Colorado, Oregon State, whoever. Washington and Oregon even. You want to throw them in there. So if you take out Stanford and Cal, that house is going to fall. Because it's that connection that, to academics, research, endowments, all that stuff, the resources that they have, that is literally keeping these teams from molting. That's the only reason. Hero 75, thank you for the $5 donation, says the reason why Disney is cutting costs is that they spent $73 billion to buy Fox right before COVID shut down, and took almost double the company's debt. Oh, I forgot about that. Yes, definitely. You're right about that, and I forgot about that. That's a good point right there. Good point. So the biggest thing that hurt the Pac-12, as far as talking chronologically, was Fox backing out. When Fox backed out, that means Pac-12 literally had to depend on ESPN, which there for a while it looked okay. ESPN, nobody was thinking ESPN was in financial trouble. Nobody. So, okay, Fox backs out. We still got ESPN. ESPN wants, Pac-12 After Dark. We're still good, guys. No problem. We'll package them in with some streaming networks. We'll still get a good deal. We're going to be fine, guys. We're going to be fine. And then we started hearing Disney, financial trouble. Lucasfilm's financial trouble. Marvel, financial trouble. And then finally, the four letters that the Pac-12 did not want to hear. ESPN in financial trouble. And that's when they got to be like, oh, you got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. The one linear cable network that we're trying to rely on, they're in financial trouble, of course. And it's right when we're trying to negotiate a TV deal. That's not good at all. And so if you think about it, ESPN, they already have deals with the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12. Now, for the ACC and SEC, it's Tier 1 rights. The Big 12 is Tier 2 rights. They don't have any deal with the Big 10 after 2024, all right? So no more Big 10 games on ESPN after 2024. So with this financial problem going on, they're trying to lowball the Pac-12, and the Pac-12 is like, sorry, guys, we can't, that's too low. We can't take it. Can't take it. So now what does ESPN want to happen? If the Pac-12 turns down a lowball offer, what would ESPN want to happen? What they would want to happen is what I just said. The Big Ten grabs the academic heart and soul out of the Pac-12. They get Stanford and Cal, get all that rich academics, research, endowments, grants, all that stuff. Great traveling partners for USC and UCLA. So they get that out. ESPN is like, fine, we don't have a deal with the Big Ten anyways. We weren't interested in Stanford and Cal. We like the sports. So then maybe they can get Washington and Oregon, or maybe even Washington State, Oregon, and Oregon State, all four of them, or maybe just Washington, Oregon. Either way, get them talking to the ACC. Before you laugh, I was thinking about that. I said, man, come to think of it, there were rumors several months ago. It was like, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, maybe not even that long, maybe just right around 2 months, I don't know, where it was rumored that the ACC was talking to Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. But if the Big Ten gets Stanford and Cal, the ACC could still be interested in at least Oregon and Washington, right? Maybe get Oregon State, Washington State, but I don't think they really add much revenue. So if the ACC goes out and grabs Oregon and Washington, that's going to help them with their TV deal a little bit. Maybe at least get them up to $40 million right off the bat, right? And it gives, see, ESPN still wants content for that After Dark slot. It doesn't have to be the Pac-12 After Dark. It can be anything After Dark. But they can't put a Big Ten game on there because they don't have a deal with the Big Ten. So the SEC is not going to be interested in those teams out west. So it comes down to the ACC and the Big 12. And it would give ESPN choices. So if they can get the four corners, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, into the Big 12, they'll have choices there for the Big 12 after dark. Maybe even throw in Oregon State and Washington State, depending on if the ACC would accept them with Oregon and Washington. And boom, ESPN has all these choices for Big 12 or ACC after dark without having to shell out money that they don't want to shell out to the Pac-12, because they know it's not a great investment. They know that the Pac-12 is a house of cards, and they themselves are in a financial bind. So the best thing to do would be, well, first of all, we'll try to get the Pac-12 at an unreasonably low price. And if they turn us down, doesn't matter. We'll pull the offer, and teams will start jumping, and we will still have content for that slot. Win-win for ESPN. Now, am I predicting that? Is that what I think is going to happen? Don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of everything. Larry Pilgrim, I appreciate your $5 donation, says, ESPN doesn't want Amazon to become the new Walmart in television. You might be onto something. One-stop shopping, cord cutting is going to be the future. Agree with that too. Alicarte, yes. And I've been saying that. Streaming will be the future of viewership, of college football, college sports, whatever you watch. I mean, you already see it. I mean, they do Netflix movies, Hulu movies, TV series. Yes, Larry, you're onto something right there. 100% agree. We see it happening right now as we're sitting here. I 100% agree with that. I just think the timing is a little. It's not quite there yet for the Pac-12. They're pulling pulling the trigger just a hair too early. I would say next 5-10 years, a streaming only deal would probably be a home run deal and would make a ton of sense. That makes me want to ask, does that mean that the Big Ten and the SEC could actually regret their TV deal with the network, linear cable networks, because of that? What if the large majority of the viewing audience starts moving towards streaming sooner than ESPN anticipated? Maybe a part of ESPN's financial problem is that switch is happening right now, and we just don't know how big of a chunk it is right now. It could be a part of the problem. We don't know unless we can actually see the numbers. So I agree with you, Larry Pilgrim. I agree with that 100%. So now I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but maybe there's something out there that I'm not aware of. Does ESPN have anything like that? Any type of live stream network? I know you can, watch updates on your phone and all that stuff, but do they actually have either an affiliate streaming network or an actual streaming network? Because I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. And if they do, what's the name of it? Maybe that would ring my bell if I'm forgetting, because I do have a bad memory sometimes. Because Larry Pilgrim is 100% right. ESPN does not want Amazon to get in the college football game because they know what the future is. They know what the future is. They do. They know it's coming. And I don't know if they're trying to figure out right now, or if they're almost there right now, or they're just starting. I don't know what part of the process ESPN is as far as switching over to streaming. ESPN Plus, yes, I forgot about that. But is that a big draw right now? Because they haven't, and I know it's on linear cable too, but I'm not familiar with it on streaming. Is that a streaming service? Is ESPN Plus a streaming service? Because I haven't watched much. I'm not subscribed to it, so I didn't know if it was something you added onto your cable package, or if it was something that you could stream on or watch, streaming, whatever. So yeah, y'all need to if y'all know a lot about that stuff, please fill me in. I am open whenever I don't know something about something. I'll let you know, because you can't BS stuff like that. Seriously, you can't. So we might be in the middle of the massive switch from linear cable over to streaming, but the Pac-12 is the timing is just not good for them. It's not good. If their TV deal would have ended in 2027 or 2028, I think that would have been the best. That would have been perfect timing for the Pac-12, because I think that's when a lot of people, the majority of people, would be watching most things, not just your movies and your binge watching, but regular TV shows, sports, all that stuff on streaming networks, on streaming devices. Can they wait this out? So my question is this: if the Pac-12 gets a streaming only deal, and I had the feeling that streaming is going to be big here in just a few years, can they wait this out? Are these teams willing to take that chance? Because like I mentioned in this video, these recruits, when they hear that the Pac-12 has a deal with streaming only, and right now the large majority of the viewing audience is through linear cable, they're going to be like, so wait a minute. You want me to come to Utah, but all of my games are going to be streamed. Not on ESPN, not on Fox, not on anything. So I'm not going to get any exposure whatsoever. If somebody wants to watch a game that I'm playing in, then they either have to subscribe to Amazon Prime TV or Apple TV, or look up my highlights. It's going to be that's going to be a recruiting tool that these other conferences can use against the Pac-12. You think recruiting in the Pac-12 is tough now? Well, if they jump the gun too soon and they sign a deal that has 0 linear cable networks, you could see recruiting become almost impossible in the Pac-12. I mean, you still have the NIL and be able to give the athletes money and all that stuff, but that exposure that they want, that TV networks, ESPN, Fox, all that stuff, they want that as well, because it's a big deal. That is a great recruiting tool. So if the Pac-12 signs a deal that's streaming only, then that could hurt the recruiting across the board. These recruits are going to let's say a recruiting battle comes down to Oregon and Tennessee, all right? 2 pretty comparable brands, 2 good brands, football heavy, one in the Northwest and one in the Southeast, right? And you're recruiting a gentleman out of the state of, I don't know, we'll say Colorado, right in the middle, okay? So it's about the same distance to either school, right? Alabama's over here going, well, first of all, we're Alabama, duh. So that gives us a leg up. And then the NIL and all that other stuff. So they already have a leg up on Oregon. But on top of that, they can add on to the dog pile. Young man, by the way, if you sign with Oregon, the Pac-12 just signed a streaming-only deal, so nobody's going to be able to see you. They would have to look up your name or subscribe to these streaming networks to even see a game that you play in. And what are the chances of the majority of Pac-12 fans or people that want to watch Pac-12 games being Amazon Prime Video customers or Apple TV customers? I'm not an Apple TV customer, and I know I don't represent everybody, but my point is, what are the chances of people that actually want to watch the Pac-12 of being subscribers of Apple TV and Amazon Prime Video? What's the chances of that? I don't think it's very good. Honestly, and I've said this before in passing, honestly, if the Pac-12 is wanting to go in the direction of streaming, look into YouTube TV. Seriously, I know way more people, way more people that have YouTube Live TV over, Amazon Prime and Apple TV. I don't, honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody that has Apple TV. And that's not saying that nobody has it. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying I personally don't know anybody. So what's the market out there for Apple TV? I would say the market for YouTube TV would be much, much bigger. I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong. I don't know. But just going from what I'm seeing and from what people talk about, word of mouth, what you see in commercials, online, both on cable and then through your streaming services, it seems like YouTube TV would be a better choice than Apple TV or Amazon Prime. Now, I would say I would put Amazon Prime Video above Apple TV. I think that's a better choice than that. But I would try to pair or go after Amazon Prime Video and either, like Charles is saying, Hulu, Disney, YouTube, go that route. But Apple TV, I don't see the draw there. I really don't. And that's not even taking into consideration, I mean, this is the Pac-12. And I'm not saying that I'm not looking down on the Pac-12. I'm saying the Pac-12 is located in the region of the United States that has the fewest viewers out of all the regions in the entire United States. 80% of the viewership that watches college football or any sports is more on the eastern side of the United States. So you don't even have the volume to start off, and now you're not going to have the exposure. That's bad on bad. If you don't have the volume, then you need the exposure. If you don't have the exposure, then you need the volume. The Pac-12 doesn't have either, and that's a recipe for disaster. But like I mentioned just a minute ago, maybe these Pac-12 presidents, athletic directors, chancellors, board of regents, maybe they're looking into it. Maybe they're doing some research, and maybe they're like, man, this mass exodus, this mass changing of the guard, as far as people going from watching linear cable to watching college sports on streaming services, it's right around the corner. So this might not seem like a good idea right now, but what if we're getting ahead of the curve, guys? What if this, we know it's the future, we just don't know how far out it is. Would these leaders of these universities be willing to take that chance? Because in the beginning, they might be struggling because of that, but once the massive turnover and the massive switching over from linear cable to streaming happens, then they might actually be in the driver's seat. And then the SEC and the Big 10, the Big 12 and the ACC, they're like, man, so wait a minute. Does that mean our deal is worthless now? Because most people are watching through streaming? I mean, this is seriously possible, people. This could be totally flipped on its head to where the SEC and the Big 10 could be in the biggest trouble, not because they don't have good brands, they have great brands, but because of who they have their TV deal with. And then Pac-12 sitting over there going, well, we didn't know if this was a good idea as far as signing streaming only, but it's working out pretty well for us because, the vast majority of people now watch college sports through streaming, and cable is now a relic. SEC and Big 10 over there going, we need to find a way to get our product to these people because, yes, we're making a crap ton of money through ESPN, but nobody's watching our games. And that hurts our brand. That hurts our product. So now they have to think on their feet, and they might have to try to I don't even know if you can do a secondary contract. I don't think you can. I think you can only do one contract, and there's different tiers. And once you're locked into it, unless everybody in the conference says, all right, we're all going to buy out, and then we'll negotiate with the streaming services. And so ESPN would make a bunch of money off of all the buyouts that everybody would be putting out of there. But then ESPN would be history. They would be gone. No more. None. And college football would it would put it in its rear view mirror. And maybe ESPN is one of those things that we'd be thinking like, yeah, I remember in the old days, we had this channel called ESPN. It was sports all day long, and man, those were the glory days. I mean, I'm being serious. It could turn into something like that. So it's something to keep your eyes on. This is a very delicate situation that could go one way or the other with, the snap of the finger. So who knows what's going to happen? Give me 1 second. I gotta get my cat real quick. He's bugging. Live show. I love it. I'm telling you, my cats know when I do a live show and they start throwing fits, guys. I'm not even joking about that. Anyways, let's get back to what we were talking about. I mean, the Pac-12 could be in a very bad position to where teams, and I'm talking the majority of the Pac-12 is about to jump because of a bad TV deal, or these teams have faith in streaming and they band together and they sign this thing, and then in a few short years, then ESPN's in trouble, and the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the ACC are looking at each other like, okay, well, now everybody's watching streaming, and okay, we're making money off of this, but what good is this money if nobody's watching our brand? Nobody has access. Nobody cares because nobody's watching ESPN. It could go either way, guys. It could go either way. Now, this is why I've always said I don't understand conference loyalty, because you have to think about your team first, your university first. What is best for so-and-so university, whoever it is? So I know when you're a fan of a team, you get used to what conference you're in. I get that. I understand that 100%. But if that conference is not looking very good, wouldn't you hope that your team makes the right decision? Now, if the right decision is wait it out and stay in the Pac-12 and then things turn around, that's fine. But if the right decision is to get out of the Pac-12 right now, same with the Big 12. Same with the Big 12. I was saying the same exact. Listen. The Pac-12 is in the same position that the Big 12 was in whenever Oklahoma and Texas announced they were going to SEC. A little bit worse. They're a little bit closer to the edge. They're a little bit closer to falling off. But the Pac-12 is in a similar situation as the Big 12 was back then. So it all comes down to this TV deal. Now, if it turns out that the Pac-12 cannot pull out a good TV deal, then these teams need to do what's best for themselves. All right. The sports are going to be there no matter what. Everything that goes with the college life, living on campus, it's all going to be there. All right. But the exposure, the recruiting, the NIL revenue, that is in jeopardy right now. So I know, as tough as it is, people that are loyal to their conference, and I understand it, I do. But as tough as it is, sometimes the right decision is like, this ship is going down. It's time to jump before we sink with it. So they have some decisions to make. Do they have faith in this streaming deal and be like, hey, well, we know that the future will be streaming, but when is that future going to be here? I mean, is this deal going to be worth it? And on top of that, how many teams don't have faith and they jump, and the teams that do have faith, there's not enough of them, and then the Pac-12 has to backload, and they're in an even worse situation just because of numbers. There's a lot to think about in this particular situation. But like I mentioned earlier, if the Big Ten goes in and grabs Stanford and Cal, that is grabbing the heartbeat of academics of the Pac-12, and that's when the house falls. I know a lot of people think that it's Oregon and Washington, and I understand why. Oregon and Washington, they are the best brands when it comes to athletics. They are the best brands. They have the highest or biggest TV markets left in the Pac-12. So I understand why they say that. But I think it's Stanford and Cal, because the main reason that a lot of these teams are saying, and whenever I say a lot of these teams, I'm talking Arizona State said it, Utah said it, Colorado said it for a while, but they've kind of backed off of it. And I think it was Washington State that said it. You know, if we jump to the Big 12, we're going to lose research funding because of their connections with Cal and Stanford. Well, if the Big Ten comes in and scoops up Cal and Stanford, and they're not even in the Pac-12 anymore, then there's really no reason for anybody to stay in the Pac-12 for the academics, because you'd be staying in the conference that's looking at a bad TV deal, and on top of that, there's no upside to having a connection to Cal and Stanford, because Cal and Stanford not going to be there anymore. Oh, man. I think that's how close the Pac-12 could be from completely imploding. And I'm not even talking about, you know, this team jumps there and this team jumps there. I'm talking about total incineration, total destruction. I think they are a Big Ten decision of getting Stanford and Cal away from total destruction. I do. Because the connection with Stanford and Cal, it is what's keeping most of these teams that have talked to the Big 12. There's a big difference between talking to the Big 12 and joining the Big 12. What we know is that there are teams that have been talking to the Big 12. No doubt about that. Colorado has been talking to the Big 12. Arizona has been talking to the Big 12. Arizona State has been talking. And as much as Mark Harlan has been denying and saying, give me a break, Utah has been talking. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to make the jump, okay, because it seems like they're not, but they have talked to the Big 12. That has happened. So teams jumping and the Pac-12 backfilling, that's not as bad as if the Big Ten comes in and just literally grabs the academic heart of the Big Ten and rips it out in Cal and Stanford. That's when everything absolutely falls apart. And that's when you can see, as crazy as this, and I know it sounds crazy because of the geography, but you have to put that out of your head because Big Ten went out and got USC and UCLA, right? So if the Big Ten comes and gets Stanford and Cal, and remember, that would be great travel partners for USC and UCLA. I don't think that they want to leave them out on an island. And yes, Oregon and Washington would help travel somewhat, but Cal and Stanford, that would help tremendously. I mean, without a doubt. So Stanford and Cal, they get swept up by the Big Ten, okay? And Washington and Oregon know that they don't have a spot in the Big Ten now. The spots that they had just got taken. And they know that the Big Ten now might be looking at the ACC in the future, right? So do they stay in the Pac-12 and just keep backfilling until you're mostly group of five conference? I don't know. Maybe you can get a halfway decent TV deal. Doubtful, but you never know. Or do you jump to the ACC? But then again, the Big Ten could be looking at the ACC in the future. So even that might not be a good decision. So could that turn into Oregon and Washington joining the Big 12? Wow. I do admit there would have to be a lot of crazy things to happen in a very short amount of time. A lot. I mean, boom, 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 boom. And it would have to happen in a certain order. But there is a cycle of events that's possible that if they happened in the order needed to happen, Oregon and Washington could end up in the Big 12. I am not predicting that. I am not saying that's going to happen. In fact, I'm saying that's not going to happen. But what I am saying is in this order of events, all right? So Big 10 grabs Stanford and Cal, right? And that takes the remaining Pac-12 spots as far as Big 10 invites, right? So Oregon and Washington can think about joining the ACC, but then the Big 10 shows their intentions of, all right, now teams are willing to jump from the ACC, so we're going to go get Florida State, we're going to get Georgia Tech, we're going to get North Carolina, and we're going to get Virginia. So now Oregon and Washington are like, well, now we can't jump to the ACC. The SEC, I mean, can that be an option? I don't think so. I don't think the SEC wants to stretch all the way out west. I think that's the one conference out of all these conferences that we've talked about. I think the SEC is the one conference that I can confidently say they don't want the West Coast. They just don't want it. So if all these events, as crazy as they are, but nonetheless, if they happened, that's how you could see Oregon and Washington in the Big 12. Don't think it's going to happen. Not predicting it's going to happen, but crazier things have happened. I have learned to never say never. And on top of that, I have learned to say there's no such thing as a sure thing until it actually happens. Because I had really good sources on that Notre Dame West Virginia story that I was doing. Really, really good. Joey knows who they are, and the most extent that I can, as far as details about them, is they were actual members of coaching staffs within the ACC. So I trusted these sources. They said, yes, the ACC is talking to West Virginia and Notre Dame, and it's going to happen. They gave me a timeline. I gave the timeline to everybody, and I made videos, and I became a laughingstock because it never happened. Come to find out, though, and I made a video on this like 5-6 months ago. Come to find out, though, there have been articles that come out that said, yes, the ACC and West Virginia did talk, but talks fell apart. So what I didn't take into consideration back then is they may be talking, and these sources may be very, very confident that it's going to happen, but what if talks fall through? There's always that what if. So I learned my lesson on that whenever it comes to prediction. There's no such thing as a sure thing until it actually happens. That's the same thing with the situation with the Pac-12. As bad as it looks, there's no such thing as, the Pac-12 is over until it's actually over. Larry Pilgrim, thank you for the $5 donation, says, Washington, Oregon, Utah made more from merchandise and ticket sales than they made from conference payouts. Yes. In fact, I might, for whatever reason, I forget stuff like that. Let me screenshot that. Yes, I screenshot super chats, and I do videos on them every once in a while. That's a good comment. And I don't know what the actual numbers are, but the conference payout for the Pac-12 is not good. So that's definitely believable for sure, and sad at the same time. Jason W., thank you for the $5 donation, says Oregon and Washington are not travel partners for USC. I agree with that. Flights times between LAX and Lincoln, Nebraska, and LAX and Oregon are only a 30-minute difference. I like this comment. You know what? I'm going to screenshot this as well because I'll forget about it if I don't. Give me a second. That's the comment that I was, maybe it sounded like I was saying it was, Oregon and Washington were good travel partners for USC and UCLA. That's not what I was saying. What I was saying was they could be considered somewhat travel partners. It helps travel a little bit. But with Stanford and Cal, those would be true travel partners. If you people don't realize this, I know that Seattle and Eugene are on the west coast of the United States, but if you look at the map of the United States and you look where these cities are, Seattle, Eugene, and then way down here, LA, that's a big gap. And to Jason's point, if you take a pin with the string and stick it in LA and a pin and stick it in Eugene or Seattle and then swing around, it's not that far away from Lincoln or maybe New Orleans or wherever. It doesn't help that much. The way it helps, if you want to label it as helps, is it adds a couple more trips to Nebraska. That's how it helps. It doesn't really shorten anything. So the closest Big Ten member to USC and UCLA is Nebraska. Well, if the Big Ten were to add Oregon and Washington, basically they're just adding two more Lincoln destinations on USC and UCLA's schedule because it's really not that close. And that's why I've been thinking about this, and I'm like, man, it actually makes more sense for the Big Ten to go after Stanford and Cal because of the academics, and they would want to be associated with those two schools. And those two schools are so loaded, they might actually be willing to take an even lower revenue share than Washington and Oregon. I mean, Stanford and Cal, the money that they make on research revenue and endowments and grants and all the entire academic side of things, it would blow your mind if you don't know anything about it. I mean, in the billions. It makes conference payouts look like pennies that you find on the side of the road. That's how much they make. So it's totally not out of the realm of possibility to where the Big Ten says, hey, Stanford, hey, Cal, so I know, don't take this as disrespect, but, we're kind of cutting it close here. So would y'all accept, I don't know, $30 million? Now, I think $30 million would be more than what they would make out of a deal in the Pac-12, as bad as things are looking right now. And, like I said, they make so much money on all this other stuff that it's not that bad anyways. They're fine. They're not in any type of financial trouble, and they would be in an academic conference. And Cal and Stanford, the only conference that I could see Cal and Stanford jumping from the Pac-12 to somewhere would be the Big Ten because of the academic prestige that the Big Ten presents itself as. Every member except for Nebraska, who lost AU status like a year or maybe not even a year after they joined the Big Ten, but every member of the Big Ten has AU status. They have high research endowments. Their academics ranked, I think every one of them are ranked in the top 100, if I'm not mistaken, better than the ACC even. And they would, Stanford and Cal would be okay to be associated with the members of the Big Ten. Big 12 would have absolutely no shot, zero, none whatsoever of ever grabbing Stanford and Cal. And the more you think about it, the more you realize that Stanford and Cal, if you're not looking at just athletics, Stanford and Cal might actually be a better fit in the Big Ten than even USC and UCLA. That's how good of a fit they would be in the Pac-12. And if the Pac-12 ever loses, mark these words, guys, if the Pac-12 ever loses Stanford and Cal, teams, universities, programs, whatever you want to call them, they would be making jumping decisions real fast, because that is the only thing that's making some of these universities hesitate as far as making the jump. I still think that Colorado and Arizona end up in the Big 12 this next go around. I really do. The talks between the Big 12 and those two schools have seemed to stay steady and very hot, and nothing negative out of Arizona or Colorado. And a lot of people tried to twist, I don't know if it was a tweet or an interview by Robbins, the president of Arizona, when he said, nobody is jumping off the Pac-12 until we see the TV deal. He didn't say nobody's jumping, period. He said nobody's jumping until we see the TV deal. In other words, we got to see the TV deal. If it's bad, then teams will probably start jumping. But if it's good, then that might be enough to where, it'll calm everybody down, let everybody know at least everything's okay, nothing to panic, just have a little bit of patience. So that's what we're waiting on. And I think the teams that are really, they want to stay in the Pac-12, but if the money's not there, then they're going to leave. And I think it's Colorado and Arizona. And then once that happens, then maybe that would put pressure on other teams to jump as well. And we'll see what happens with Oregon and Washington. Maybe the Big Ten will take all four of them. Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. I don't know. I just think as far as value goes, whenever it comes to the entire picture, I know this is crazy for me to say, or it seems like it. I actually think Stanford and Cal bring more value to the Big Ten over Washington and Oregon because of everything that they encompass. And I've said it many times, the Big Ten is basically a Commonwealth conference. Everybody shares their resources. Cal and Stanford, they have the elite of all resources. So just something to keep in mind. And if it did happen, Pac-12 would be in major, major trouble if they ever lost Stanford and Cal, because that's what keeps these universities with that mindset of this is an elite conference. We have an association with Stanford and Cal that drives in the research revenue because they know they're associated and that they have access to all the stuff that Stanford and Cal have. And if they lose that connection, then all that stuff is going to go down the drain. So anyways, hopefully all you guys enjoyed yourselves. Listen, I'm not trying to paint just a terrible picture of the Pac-12. I'm trying to give both sides of the story, and that's why I mentioned the fact that there is such a big turnover of viewership from linear cable to streaming. So that gives the Pac-12 some hope. If they can wait this out and these teams have faith in the future, sign this deal, keep the Pac-12 together, and then slowly, maybe not even slowly, maybe it happens rapidly, they see the switchover of viewership from linear cable to streaming, because I do think that happens. I just don't know how fast it happens. That's the only question. So we'll see. There is hope for the Pac-12. There is. It just depends on if these presidents and chancellors and board of regents have faith in the streaming deal or not. We'll see. I don't know. Anyways, guys, I had a great time. Hopefully you had a great time. Make sure to hit the like button on the way out. Even if you watched a replay of this and you didn't get to catch it live, that's fine. Hit the like button. Greatly appreciate it. Everybody in the comments section, I don't know if y'all realize just how much the comments help, but they do. So I appreciate you guys. And of course, the people with the super chats, the direct donations to the channel, greatly appreciated. Love the support, guys. I'm very, very thankful, and I'm very, very blessed. But for tonight, on Hump Day, Wednesday, Golden Blue is out.